Gen Z is the first generation that could retire way richer than their parents, but only if they start investing right and early. The choices you make in your 20s can literally shape the freedom you enjoy in your 40s and 50s. And who better to guide us on this than a leader who has been one of the few in the mutual fund industry to deliver consistent performance year after year while managing wealth worth billions of dollars. It's truly a matter of privilege for me to host this conversation on behalf of Prudent Asset India Private Limited and to welcome a leader who has shaped the financial journeys of countless Indians, Mr. Sunil Subramaniam. He is a strategic advisor at Prudent Asset, the founder and CEO of Sense and Simplicity, and the former MD and CEO of Sundaram Mutual Fund. With over 3 decades of experience across Bank of America, State Bank of India, and leading financial institutions, Mr. Subramaniam has built a reputation for decoding complex economic trends into simple, actionable investment strategies. Welcome, sir, and we are truly honored to have you.
Thank you.
Prudent Asset India is extremely optimistic about your association and confident that your vision and guidance will help investors not just learn, but also truly earn, creating sustainable wealth for generations to come. Today, we are looking forward to your wisdom on a subject that matters deeply to the next generation. How Gen Z should approach investing in a world of changing aspirations, digital adoption, and evolving market dynamics.
Thank you, Jaslin. Look forward to this conversation.
All right, then let's just directly get into it, right? So, to start off with, sir, I want to know what inspired you to actually step into this world of investments and mutual funds.
So actually, it was by accident, to be honest, right? The reason I say that is my choice of finance was an accident because I wanted to become a scientist, and
Interesting.
I was enrolled to do my PhD. I had to drop out because of family reasons, and then the one world which your past didn't matter was financial services. So I joined a bank because I wrote an exam and I got it. But the very fact that I wanted to be a scientist meant that I was able to use my left brain and right brain together. So I think that's what attracted me to finance, that it's a field where research and study can help drive outcomes. So there's a lot of correlation between the efforts you put in, how smart you are, and that can lead to a good end result. So I think that's what I liked about finance. And that's why I joined the banking system. I spent 20 years in banking. And then again, by accident, I came into the investment business here. That's more due to family reasons that I didn't want to move to Bombay, which is the financial capital. And I found that there was an asset management company based in Chennai, which was willing to give me a national role. But I had to learn investment in a professional way. I've been investing ever since I had started earning, but to learn in a professional way. So I think basically it's an accident, but I think what it's like I said, ultimately investments is one thing where your inputs, outputs, and outcomes can be reasonably planned.
Right. So you would rather say that the mutual funds and investment industry chose you rather than you sort of chose it. Looks like that's sort of how it has come about. And since you sort of got into it accidentally, right? What was the biggest surprise when you got into it?
I think the biggest surprise was that how much uh, wealth can be created if you do research and study, right? Because we all tend to take a very passive approach, saying I'll earn my income and I'll save it and it will somehow grow. But between option of saving one, like in a bank deposit, versus option of saving two, like in gold, or option of saving three, like in real estate, option of saving four, like in equities, an option of five in mutual funds, right? It's a whole plethora of options and choices can make a big difference. I think that's the biggest learning that the industry has taught me, that if you are smart about your choices, you can play a major role in the outcome.
Yes. So, since you spoke about choices, what do you wish you had known, back when you about money and investing when you were in your 20s?
So I think that what I should have known was that a young person. So I see, first thing is that we'll probably touch upon this later, but you should know your own risk appetite when it comes to uh, putting your money in, right? So the point is that after you choose to be a risk, I was a person who was comfortable with taking risk, right? But the true value of advice by somebody to help you take the risk I just thought that taking risk would pay off. It was a very simplistic understanding saying you take the risk, it'll pay off. But the fact that advise the risk and diversification of risk, these were two things which I wish I had known, because they would have made the right asset choices at that very early stage in life.
So, advised risk and diversification of risks, two things which you wish you had known. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, often when we study risk is equal to return, right? We study the graph in finance, right? So, probably that is where a lot of people might think the same way. And often the stories which we are exposed to are those, right, of somebody taking risk, and then we don't get to know the sort of background that might have gone in behind the closed doors in when taking that risk. Okay. Now, today's Gen Zs, what we want to talk about in today's episode. Now, they love experience, right? They wanna, they want to experience the today. They want to travel. A lot of them maybe don't want to get married or have kids, and they want to spend, on gadgets, on lifestyle, and things like that. How do you think they can balance their living in the moment while also, creating long term wealth?
So I think that it's the basic lesson of delaying gratification, right? As opposed to instant gratification. Because thanks to the whole lending system, which has exploded in India, the buy now, pay later has become the mantra in people's mind. So the instant gratification of saying, oh, my income is so much. So if I take this portion of it and put it in an EMI, I can buy a big, nice car, right? I can do this holiday, I can do this. So that instant gratification thought process is a key part of the Gen Z thought process. But I think what they need to understand, and this is that delaying gratification can be far more rewarding and pleasurable than instant gratification. But the problem there is that they don't have a vision of that future, right? When they say typical, let's take a look at a typical person who, let's say, earns for 25, 30 lakhs a year, right? So in 25, 30 lakhs a year, you're talking about 2 to 2.5 lakhs a month. And he says, okay, I can go and spend 50,000 rupees a month as an EMI to what at 50,000 rupees a month as an EMI, you can probably buy, let's say, a Hyundai, Creta, right? That kind of a car. And he looks at it, it's snazzy, it's nice, he can take it to the nightclubs party. But if he sits for a minute and thinks that if I didn't do that now, and if I just bought a vehicle to transport me from A to B right now, go for a low end model, and take that balance and I save it, then a Lamborghini or a Maserati could be in his vision. He doesn't think about the fact that I can get a Maserati. He's looking at the fact that I can buy a Creta today and wants to go and enjoy that Creta. But if he delays the gratification and says, can I drive a Maserati? That vision of the future, then he will realize that unless my money grows faster than inflation, I will never be able to buy that Maserati. So you got to then choose your investment in such a manner that it can grow at a rate at which, at a certain age, you can buy the Maserati or the Lamborghini. So I think that Gen Z, if they could just delay that gratification and think about that future which could be beyond their wildest imaginations, and not succumb to this temptation of doing it. So that's where, when we then tell them invest, I think that the right word to use for them is postpone your consumption. Because investment is nothing but postponed consumption, right? End of the day, we don't want to die with all the money, we want to spend it and have a good life. So I think it's that dream, right? That if you delay gratification, and it's very simple, right? Because when our children, your children, the parents teach you, right? Hey, you have your soup, you have your salad, you get that chocolate at the end of the meal. But the kid wants the chocolate first and say, I'll worry about the dahi chawal later or the dal chawal later. So I think that's the lesson, right? I think the Gen Z, that we to tell them that we are not telling you to save and avoid gratification. That is, it is that there's a better future in front if you are smart about your invest. I think that's, to me, summarizes what we should be telling the Gen Z.
I think you've totally hit the nail because often when we talk about long term wealth creation, the image that comes to your mind is somebody who's not enjoying, anything that you have created and you just have a lot of amount saved in your bank. But like you said, it is not that we are looking to do. We are just looking to postpone. So instead of looking at that Creta now, look at a Lamborghini later, and that could probably be the right way for Gen Z to look at as well. Now you mentioned, for example, around 25 to 30 lakh income, right? When we discussed, a lot of youngsters today, especially with the current rate of inflation and the cost of living rising up, feel that they don't earn enough to even start investing. They feel that the money they have is just enough for them to survive. What do you think your advice would be for them?
It's again boils down to the same concept that I just spoke about, Jaslin. That is that whatever income you have, right? Uh, you must think that I have to set aside a portion for my future gratification. It doesn't matter. So the point is then what you do, you have to give up some of your current aspirational gratification for today. So let's say you want to buy an entry level car, right? And then there's a Creta, which is a mid level. So you think that, oh, I deserve the Creta today. Why should I go and settle for a Maruti smaller car? Right? I deserve the Creta because my friends have it. So it's that feeling of keeping up with the Jonases, they say, right? That, oh, my friend has a Creta, I have a Creta. But the smarter guys, right? What they say is, look, I want to get from point A to point B today, right? Let me take a vehicle which does that. But I'll keep it in my dreams that I want to do, and so for that, I have to take my income and put it into a postponement fund. So it doesn't matter how little your salary is. Everybody has dreams and aspirations, right? So savings, it cannot be after consumption. Savings has to be parallel with consumption. Ideally, I would say savings should come before consumption, but then that will put me off the Gen Z. They say, oh, yeah, this old man is coming and telling us, don't save. No. So I'm just saying that you balance it. But what proportion do you put into consumption? What proportion you put into savings? And when I say savings, it's not just savings bank, right? Into investment, into postponement of consumption. So all of life is nothing but current consumption and postponed consumption. So that has to be, therefore, you earn a 10 lakh salary or a 1 crore salary, there's a proportion that you set aside for current consumption and a proportion for postponed consumption. And depending on how ambitious you are, the greater your postponed consumption should be.
Very well put. Equal current and postponed consumption, right? So just balance it out, and how ambitious you are should drive how much you want to postpone. So if you would sort of break this down, right, into little money habits, what would you say would be 2 or 3 money habits that every Gen Z should develop early in life?
So the first is that regularity is important. Habits are important, right? Whether you want to do your exercise, you want to discipline your food, it's important to have good habits. So saving stroke investments also, the key thing is to make it a habit. Now, the word SIP will come to in a bit later, but regularity is the key. You may choose to do an SIP or not, that's okay. But every month, your income comes to you regularly every month. I'm saying by and large, right? Except if you're an entrepreneur, leaving that class aside, most people get money every month, right? So the regularity of your income has to match the regularity of your expense and the regularity of your postponed consumption. So first small habit is be regular about what you do. Don't say, oh, if I get that Diwali bonus, then I will start my investment journey, right? No, from what you get every month, make sure that your life has a rhythm to it. Like your body has these circadian rhythms, right? Like that, your life has a rhythm. And it's important that life's income and expense is regularity of monthly. That's the way the world is. So your savings also has to match that regularity of the cycle so that you know, on the 5th of the month, I get my salary. Then on the 6th of the month, I set this aside. So first is do that. Second is, doesn't matter how small you start. Once you build that habit, once you build that muscle, right, then you'll become stronger and stronger. Then as your every year's increment goes up, or you change a job and make a much higher income level, this habit will not go away. You'll set aside that proportion. So second point I want to make is regularity. Second, fix the proportion. If you earn 10,000 today, you're going to save 3,000, then that's okay. But when you earn 1 lakh, then you make sure you save 30,000, right? So keep the proportions to that constant. You can keep varying the proportion based on your assessment of your life, right, and your ambitions. But there should be a proportion which should guide you. That's a second, habit to have, is fix the proportion, because then it's only what is left behind of that proportion, that you're then free to do what you want with it, right? But set this aside first. That's the second part. Third aspect is understand that the biggest enemy in your life is inflation, right? So understand inflation instead of avoiding it. Most people, when they put their money into bank deposits, which my generation made the mistakes in terms of putting more money into bank deposits, is that they put it there without paying any attention to the fact that inflation is eroding that money, because they saw that money in their bank account, they felt that comfort, and they said, okay, thoda to badh raha hai. But the fact that महंगाई उससे भी ज़्यादा बढ़ रही है, to just switch to Hindi for a minute, is the fact that people don't understand that. So I think first thing you need to understand is that when you're postponing your consumption, you can only succeed if you're going to choose an asset class which beats inflation. So that's a third rule. So just to summarize the three simple steps: be regular, set a proportion, and choose the asset classes which have the power in them to beat inflation. These are the key things which they should keep constantly in their mind.
What are some asset classes that you would say would beat inflation?
So I would say that there are basically three asset classes which have positive correlation with inflation, right? We generally go with inflation. So first is real estate, second is gold, and third is equities as an asset class, right? And there's a logic to this which I'll quickly explain. Why gold? Because gold is a harbor of safety. So when inflation is rising very high, people tend to say, oh, gold's price will also rise. So they put money. So that is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because people feel that gold will rise during inflation. They buy more of gold and it rises during inflation, right? So gold has a very simplistic thing with inflation. Real estate, because we all know that the world's population is growing, but the world is not growing. The world, the earth we are given in is a limited space. The seas take away a portion, the hills take away a portion, the rest of the flat land is all you got to live in. But people are being born every day. Not about you. The rest of the world around you is producing children. So there is going to be pressure on land. When there is pressure on land, the demand supply means that the demand is going to outstrip the supply. So it will keep going up. And inflation is nothing but demand and minus supply. Any commodity, if the demand is exceeding supply, that's where the price goes up. So real estate is correlated because land is a limited resource, and the demand for it is unlimited because population keeps on growing. The third class is equities, right? Now, why do equities have a correlation, and why are they the best asset class of the three? Is because inflation is the cost rise in the commodity you buy.
Yeah.
Okay? So one important lesson to learn in life is that what hurts you benefits somebody sitting somewhere else. Life is a zero-sum game. You lose,
Yeah.
somebody gains. You gain, there's somebody losing. Remember that, right?
Yeah.
So inflation, you're losing, right? You're losing the purchasing power of your money. So there's somebody out there gaining. Who's that? He's the guy who's producing that product which you are buying, right? And in products where the supply is limited, the price is set by the seller. In products where the supply is enormous, the price is set by the buyer, right? So the companies which produce these quantities, which are limited in supply, are benefiting from the inflation. And because they set the price, they set a price which is inflation plus their profit, right?
Right.
That company, that's the company. And this is the better of those companies, the larger of those companies which come to the stock market and get listed, right? So very simply then, that if you then become an owner of that company, which is benefiting from the demand supply equation, you will suffer the inflation as an individual consumer, but as the owner of the company, you will gain the not only the inflation, but the inflation plus the profit, which he is able to command because it is the seller's market. So the equity market, which gives you ownership of these companies, is the only one which on the long run is guaranteed to beat inflation. So the second aspect of it is, though in gold and real estate the world is changing, both gold and real estate are 90% physical assets. So the transaction costs of buying and selling, you go to buy jewelry, it charges wastages, it charges making
Yeah.
charges, everything. You go to real estate, there's a stamp duty of purchasing, and then time, and then the other guy. So and then there's the black money versus the white money, right? So the equities market, thanks to it being a financial market, is free. It's a very minimal transaction cost. You can buy and sell in a jiffy. So the ease of transaction means that there's a hidden advantage to equities of getting the benefit of seamless and smooth transaction ability. So that's why I would say that that asset class to beat inflation has got to be equity.
So, if a young investor has to start, what would you recommend should be their, sort of starting point for investing among these asset class?
No, you see, basically, the first thing is that all customers are not the same. Even within Gen Z, there's the conservative chaps and there are the aggressive chaps, right? So you got to understand yourself first as an investor, because ultimately, right? You have heard about this left brain, right brain concept, right? The left brain makes the logical, rational, calculative decisions. The right brain is the emotional, intuitive, those kind of thing, right? So while what happens is that very often we deal with investment as a left brain activity, put in the numbers, I put in a return, right? The fact is that ultimately your right brain also comes and demands its say. You feel that this is a good asset class. You'd like to do. So why I'm saying this, win your risk appetite, you got to also blend how far are you a left brain, right brain person. Okay. So why I'm saying this, so some people, for example, they're emotional. Oh, mere ko ghar chahiye. I want a roof over my head. The other guys, they say, Arey, why bother with getting stuck to one city, one place, one locality with a house? I'll rent and do whatever I want when I want. So the Gen Z, by and large, is now shifting to this rent. That's why Ubers are there. Don't own a car, do an Uber. Don't own, Oyo, go to a holiday. So the point is that you got to understand you as a Gen Z person. I'm trying to say that within Gen Z, understand yourself, saying how willing are you to take risk and how far are you emotionally driven in your actions, right? So if you're emotionally driven, take care of your emotions, because any amount of logic can never override your emotion. So if you feel, oh, I need to buy a house, go and buy it. Take an EMI, go and buy it, right? But like I said, that rule is there, right? Do you want to be able to buy a decent house to stay in and a larger house later or not is a call you need to take. Correct? But go and buy that house if you're emotionally driven. Or you're a very practical, cold-headed guy, then say, I'll rent my house. I don't want real estate. Okay. Because real estate as owned as a house is different from a real estate as an investment. Correct? So
Yeah.
that's where I'm coming from. So once you assess your risk appetite, right, then is where you look at your situation, and inevitably, whichever be your emotion stroke your risk appetite, equities has to be the core asset class, because your purpose of doing investing is to delay your gratification and buy something better. Since you want that, the amount of equity can vary depending on the amount of risk you are willing to take as an individual. So, to a guy in the Gen Z who is in early 20s, if he is of the risk taking type, 85% can be in equities. Okay. However, if you are a very conservative investor, right, I would still say at the early stage in life, you should put at least 60% in equity. So the band is only 60 to 85 in that, right? Because of the fact that if you take below 60, then your chances of consistently beating inflation and achieving something better in the future get hurt to that extent. So this is the way I would put that. Keep equities as your core asset class within this whole basket. 60 to 85 is how you vary it when you're starting young, based on what's your risk appetite. And when obviously this correlates with ambition, correct? The guy who's
Yeah.
more ambitious, he's the one who has an aspiration to buy a Lamborghini. So it matches them.
Right. So you would say 60 to 80% start with equities, right? Now, to invest in equities, of course, there are many ways you can do that, right? You can go into a mutual fund or you can directly buy equities directly, right? How do you think they should sort of start?
So I think that I would not say don't do direct equities. Okay. I'll tell you why. Because the mutual fund has a fund manager who uses two tools at his disposal, right? So the first tool that he has is his knowledge, the knowledge which he has access to. There are a lot of analysts who are doing the work, give them the recommendation, they do their own research. So he has the power of that knowledge, either outsourced or done by himself. Second is the diversification, which is a key part of any mutual fund, that you have to diversify. The regulator does not allow you to take all your money in a mutual fund, put in one stock. Regulator has
Yeah.
on per stock. So compulsorily diversification, right? So these two things are there. But to understand the benefit of that, if you will put a little bit in stocks of your own, you will realize the riskiness of it. So I'm saying, rather than tell them don't go near stocks, I would say actually take a little bit of stocks so that you understand your mistakes and you become a better investor in the process. The point is not to go and put everything into stocks, but put, let's say, even 20%, right? Put 20% into direct stocks. Understand. But if you put everything into stocks, I'll share one thing with you. When the Nifty was started to today, it's only 20% of the stocks in the Nifty which were there when Nifty started are there in the Nifty today. So, right. So, you just can't say buy and hold. I bought this equity stock and it'll do. I mean, people always use examples. Oh, no, I bought Reliance stock, and that guy said that he married his daughter and everybody with the Reliance stock. But those are the odd, long shot ones which click, right? So, buying your stocks yourself, right, is just a learning curve for which you allocate 10 to 20%, and see, then you'll realize, oh, I thought Zomato was very good. Then 5 years later, I realized that somebody else has overtaken them. There's a competitive world. That company is good. Colgate Palmolive, I brush my teeth every day, so I'll buy Colgate. But then there's a dynamic market. Why I'm saying this, every investor, the more knowledge he gets, the better he will be. But since he's a novice and starting on his own, he can't put it at risk. So he has to blend. So I would say 10 to 20% you put in stocks, 80% you give it to mutual funds, because of the two reasons I said. They diversify, so they don't take bets on any one thing. The second is they have a knowledge to judge next 3 to 5 years which company I think will beat its competition, and hence its share price will go more. So take advantage of that, for which end of the day the maximum expense ratio that a regulator allows is 2.25%. So 2% as a cost, when you're looking at a return in the double digits, is a price worth paying for. And what will happen is that 10-20% in stocks, right? You can also look at your mutual fund portfolios and use that to curate your stocks. So the learning
Right.
comes from both ways. So keep that there, because why I'm saying this is, you say 100% of your portfolio should be in mutual funds. It's good for the textbooks. But always there will be this friend over a glass of beer who says, hey, I got this stock and it tripled in 3 months. What are you doing? So you'll constantly feel that pressure in society, right? At the Gen Z level. So yield to it, do it. Like they say about drinking, right? You drink with discipline.
Moderation.
Like that, you do this also.
Right. So I think to sort of summarize, right, probably to start off with, it's better to have at least 40 to 60% in mutual funds and maybe 10 to 20% in direct stocks. And then you can see about your real estate and gold basis, your emotions and other things, right? But this is the overall recommendation to start off with, right? Now, to invest in mutual funds, or one of the biggest ways that everybody talks about is SIPs, right? Rather than doing a one-time payment in mutual funds. Um, can you sort of explain why SIPs are recommended in general more rather than one-time investments for wealth creation?
There are multiple reasons for it. So, first is going back to what we said a few minutes ago in terms of the regularity and the discipline, which is an important, the habit of investing. SIP is a habit. So, once you start an SIP, it goes on its own, it functions on its own, right? So, because it's a key part of this habit, which is a critical part of your investment choice. That's number one. Number two, there is something called as the eighth wonder of the world, which is the power of compounding, right? So any simple Excel sheet will show you that if something is going to grow and you put it in, it keeps compounding, compounding. So SIP, by putting it in every month, makes that power of compounding work for you, right? Very simple. That's the second. The third part is an interesting concept called rupee cost averaging. Now, it's a word sounds complicated. All it says is that my end goal, right, is that I have to want a bigger corpus, correct? Now, in a market where the price is not constant every month, so you take equivalent product to compare would be a recurring deposit in a bank. So bank says I give you 7%, you give me money every month, it will compound at 7%, and you'll get a corpus at the end of your uh, 10 year, 5 year, 15 year, whatever time frame. Now, what is happening is every month installment of the recurring deposit is giving you 7%.
Right.
Because it's flat and is stable and the bank has committed to you. But in the stock market, the price every month that you buy those stocks, which is the fund manager buys, you put an SIP in a mutual fund, the mutual fund buys stocks. That price varies by the minute, not even daily. It varies by the minute and by the second, correct? So
Yeah.
when the fund manager got your money in the first month, he bought a set of stocks at a particular price. But next month, God knows whether that price is going to be higher or lower, correct? So if the
Yeah.
price is higher, then for the same rupee, you got less number of shares.
Yeah.
Right? And what the price is lower, you got more number of shares. Now, ultimately, if you believe that in the long run, that share price is going to compound up, the more cheaper dates that you buy, the better for you. Simple. That's
Yeah.
rupee cost average. This means I'm averaging my cost. Sometimes the stocks will be higher, sometimes it will be lower. When it's higher, I'll buy less, but when it's lower, I buy more. So, in a times when the market is around, it's scared. Oh, Indo-Pak war, Trump tariff, Russia-Ukraine war. When there is that, the market gets frightened. So the market gets frightened, the share price fall. It has nothing to do with the company's earnings capacity. Company is going to earn. It's a cigarette company, is going to buy sell cigarettes. He's going to what? But the price that the market is willing to pay for it keeps changing because the market is a function of the world at large. So because of the volatility, you get lots of opportunities in an SIP to buy the same stock. You may have bought it at 100 rupees the first month, but you may very soon buy it at 80 rupees, which means you got a super profit that something which is 100 is going to become 5,000. You bought at 100, it will become 5,000. But if you bought at 80 and becomes 5,000, you made that much more return compared to 100 becoming 5,000. Right? So that's rupee cost everything. So by just committing every month to putting that investment, you get the ability to benefit from the fearness of the market, from the volatility of the market. The market is got scared by certain unrelated events, but the price has crashed and you got more out of it. You get more bang for your buck, if I may use that terminal.
But if a 22-year-old starts, say, an SIP of 500 or 1,000 rupees, how can that sort of help them in the next 10 to 15 years? Because it sort of seems like a very less amount uh, to kick off with.
So there are two, three things here. Once he's doing the SIP through a mutual fund, the mutual funds have now come up with modifications, right? So you open an SIP account and you put the money in, right? And tomorrow your salary is gone up, right? You can top up your SIPs, right? So all it needs, once you already set up the mandate, you just need to go and tell the bank instead of putting 500, now make it 750. You can keep topping
Right.
it up as your income goes, you can go to. So it doesn't prevent you from doing. So start small. You open the account. It's already compounding. Whenever you get an increment, you just put more into the same thing. That's one. Second is you may have got a huge increment after 5 years because you change jobs, right? Now you have the benefit that those 5 years, how has this fund already performed? So if you are happy with it, then you do a top up in that fund. But if you feel no, I wanted a better fund, then start a new SIP with a new fund. Let the old one continue. In the new fund, you can start another SIP. So there is no limit to the number of SIP amounts you can do. The third aspect is that many of the fund houses also allow you to put in additional amounts into an SIP account. So I'm putting 500 rupees a month. Suddenly I got Diwali bonus of 25,000 rupees. That same SIP account, I can go and put 25,000 rupees. It just adds to the corpus. So it's important to start small. For every drop makes the ocean. There's no such thing as too small. In fact, we is now promoting 250 rupee SIPs in a big way. But I know of fund houses, including my old one, which even takes 100 rupees as an SIP. So there's no amount too small for starting an SIP. Just kickstart the process. That the first step, the starting trouble you get over with. Go and start that SIP.
Okay. So when you are looking to invest, right, even in mutual funds, you have equity, you have debt, you have hybrid, right? How should they sort of decide how to allocate their funds?
So basically, you correctly mentioned the three type categories of funds. Debt funds are largely basically competing against the savings accounts and the fixed deposits. Earlier, there was a tax advantage to them. Now there is no tax advantage. So what are the benefits of debt funds? Is that generally they tend to beat the savings account and the fixed deposits because of two reasons. One is that when you're fixed deposit, the bank fixes the rate. How does he fix the rate? He decides at what rate he can lend in the market, takes off his cost of his office, salaries, falana, or if a loan goes bad or whatever, deducts that, deducts his profit margin, what he feels he should deserves, and then sets the deposit rate to you.
Right.
What the mutual fund does is take your money and directly give it to that end lender. So entire cost of the bank, its salaries, its rented building, all that goes away. So that savings of that cost is shared between the profit that the fund managers make and that return that you get. So generally, debt mutual funds give you a slightly better return than fixed deposit. Second aspect is that there is also the taxation element. Now, you put money in a savings account on a fixed deposit. What happens is that the bank gives you interest every quarter. And in a fixed deposit, you can say, I don't want the interest today. I'll take it at the end of the fixed deposit, right? You can let it compound. But even if you do that, you have to pay tax on the accrued interest. Though you didn't get it in cash from the bank, you have to pay tax. So every year, the bank gives a statement to the income tax authorities through something called AIS, where they say, this person with this PAN number, I paid him so much interest. If it's above a certain level, he deducts TDS from it. Even otherwise, it gets counted. You'll have to pay your 30% tax on that. But in a mutual fund, compounding inside takes place and you only pay the tax on it when you take out the money. So for 10 years, if you have not taken the money, you don't pay any tax for 10 years. At the 10th year, depending on what profit you make, that year you make. So you save that interest on the tax, right? Because you keep paying the tax, you lost the money, right? Debt mutual funds are generally then safer as a category. They are meant to take care of your short-term needs for money. They are not an ideal inflation-beating wealth creation vehicle. They are meant to cater to your need to park your money for a short time. You know that in a year and a half, I'll need the money 2 years. They are ideally positioned for that. The hybrid category, I'll come to later. Equities is the ultimate category which says invest for the future, beat inflation. Now, what is this hybrid category? It is a mix of debt and equity. Now, why people say, well, why do you need a mix of debt and equity? Whatever I want to put in debt, I put in debt. What I put in equity. Because people who are moderately risk oriented, who want to take the entire risk of equity, but they still want some inflation beating return. So instead of getting say 15-16% potential return in equity, they say, give me 10-12%. So what the hybrid category do is put what 60-65% in equity, put 35% in debt. So then what happens is that the volatility of the portfolio, the equity share prices go up and down, but the debt gives you that stabilized 7-8% return. So your overall portfolio will be 65% volatile, 35% not volatile. So for a person whose risk type is of moderate, the hybrid is the solution to suit it. So it's nothing but from a risk profile perspective, it still helps you beat inflation, right? But what it does, it gives up some of the gain to give you some of the comfort that her roads my portfolio is going up and down. I'm having heart attack. No. So I think hybrid funds in between and equity. So now should a person have hybrids compulsory in his portfolio, even if he is of a high risk, right? Now, if you're a very high risk person, not necessary, but you can still keep, and I'll tell you why. Because these hybrid funds, right, they protect you during volatility, right? But suppose, let's say for 6 months, let's say the equity is going to give you losses. Let's say situation is very bad, COVID ke time mein, something like that, no? For some time. So at that time, the debt actually gives you 7% return versus a minus 10% for equity. So you made 17% more return, right? So for people who smartly can use hybrids in times of volatility, they can add hybrids too. So it's not just only for moderate risk. So in a person's portfolio, then I would say that nobody should be there who's 100% into equities, because equity markets are not something that goes up every day of the week. There are bad times in the world. Things happen bad. We can't control those. When there are bad things, debt is the one which comes and protects you. So either you do a equity and a separate debt allocation, which is one possibility, or you do hybrid. And I'll tell you why hybrids are preferable over debt, because I said debts don't carry any tax benefits other than the postponement of tax, correct? But hybrid, because their composition has 60% equity, carry the equity taxation benefit to debt. If you want to buy debt to save yourself in troubled times, do it through a hybrid fund, which gives you a tax efficient way of buying debt, so that you get a little bit of that kicker of that tax benefit also. Hybrids do play an important role in the portfolio, because obviously nobody wants to put 100% in a volatile asset class. So hybrids have a key role to play. There are multiple types of hybrids. We'll not go through that into detail, but conceptually, this is what it is. And the equities, the government wants to encourage equities for people as a, what do you call that, postponement of consumption concept. Taxation has favored equities through the years. It has come down in terms of its advantages, but it's still very strong in the sense that within 1 year, if you redeem, you pay only 20% tax versus 30% marginal tax. If you stay for 1 year, you only pay 12.5% tax. So even the government is geared to supporting you to be long term in your thought process by giving you a much softer taxation for equities as an asset class. And that's where hybrids, which are equity oriented, take advantage of that. So buying equity, buying debt with equity taxation is hybrid.
Right. Makes sense. I think very clear. And bases your risk appetite, you can mix and match and sort of pick it up. Now, even other than this, classification, you also have international and thematic funds, right? And a lot of Gen Z investors are interested in it, like AI, EVs, and even international companies. Maybe you want to invest in an Apple, or invest in mutual funds which have international portfolio. So, what do you say, for somebody who's starting out? Should they even consider this or just stick to basics, like we discussed, have, probably some combination of hybrid and equities, or should they even consider this?
They should definitely consider it. And I'll tell you why. Because the nature of Gen Z, they're far more exposed to knowledge. Thanks to Google and ChatGPT and everything, right? They're aware of what's happening in the world. So their knowledge levels are far greater than my generation. Okay. Once you're aware of something, right? Unless you go and experience that thing, you'll never understand it. So just like I said, everybody must invest in stocks, right? To a limited portion. Everybody must invest in international, in these new age things, because 10 years ago, the company like Zomato, nobody knew anything about. This concept that I will order food from home was not there, right? Correct? But today it's given, right? So why I'm saying this is the world is changing, and it's the changing world which will also deliver value. So awareness of that world means you must go and experience the power of that world. So I would encourage everybody, but like I said, keep it to limits, right? Keep international to a portion of your portfolio, right? Depending on your risk appetite, right? Second is, how far are you in that world? For example, there are Gen Zs who are working in the AI world. So they know the potential of AI. So for them to go and invest in an international AI, firm, right, as a stock through a fund or through that is something that he knows that thing. So he should give vent to that. Otherwise, if you just hold him back, it will be not tuned to his emotions. So it's important. But like I said, with moderation, you take that because these are higher risk, because they are international, are subject to a whole bunch of other risks, right, in the world, something affecting that particular country, which you don't know anything about. You can't prepare for those. So three rules there. So first is that you definitely take exposure, right, to that. Second is that do it through a fund, because fund, but you can choose the fund which suits what you want to do. So you could have a specific AI based fund, right? You could have choose that fund, but choose a fund because in doing that you want somebody's guidance who is researching it and who is diversifying. So research plus diversification are key in whatever you do. Okay, so do it through a fund. And the third aspect there is that the diversification by yourself also should be there on top of the fund manager's diversification within that sector, right? So
Right.
country diversification. You want a China fund, you feel China, okay, go. So experience it. I'm saying for the Gen Z, my rule is that experience it, but don't put everything into something that you believe in, right? Because you could then lose your shirt with it, right? So that's my advice to them, that definitely experience the world. The world is opening up. India is also gradually opening up. And the gift city, which has been opened in Gandhinagar, is going to allow you to buy international stocks through a Gujarat based fund. So there are a lot of options which are going to open up in this near future. So definitely you should experience it, and as a part of your learning curve, and part of the fact that other markets also do well. While India is a growth story of the future, other markets also do well.
And take advantage of it. Yeah, yeah. So, like you said, right, India is growing rapidly. Which sectors in India do you think hold, the highest promise that Gen Z can capture through their investments or mutual funds?
So I think first is, of course, I think the AI technology digital space. I think India already has a core in terms of the IT services. We need to expand that into AI, and I'm confident that will happen, and we will be up on speed on that curve. So today we are not, in terms of China has obviously taken a lead even over the US in that. But I believe that India will catch up fast. Our technology policy, everything is rapidly. So I think that AI, not many companies in that yet in that, but if you keep an eye out, that's a growth part of the future. That's one. The second aspect I would say from an India growth perspective is this direct to consumer businesses, the Zomatos, the Swiggies, the Ubers, the right. That's a big transformative change that's happening, and more industries and everything will come into it. In fact, only a fraction of those industries are really listed in the stock market. So as they come in, that they are going to be your new gen. So I would say new gen companies. In the one simple brief, right? One second. The third aspect is, I would say, a concept called Atmanirbharta. The government has been strongly driving that India needs to come up to speed and manufacture all the things it needs itself. And the recent tariff related thing has only strengthened the government's resolve to support that. So, what I'm saying is focus on those industries where the government is putting its efforts into building up local skills, and defense is a very big thing there. Pharma is a very big thing. Defense, in fact, it showed in the Indo-Pak War that is a lot of the indigenous drones and UAVs that helped us win the war, right? So, and this has a huge potential because of the future. So, I would say sectors like this, and India is lagging behind in manufacturing the rest of the world. So, huge amount of effort is going to go into promoting manufacturing. So, defense, pharma, pharma, because we have the necessary colleges and the skills, and already we are. During COVID, we were the pharmacy to the world. You would have heard that word, right? So pharma is something which is an Indian core strength which will continue to grow. So I would say these are the kind of sectors where you basically see that uh, India's strengths are a population, an English speaking smart population. So what are we going to do to take advantage of that is what is going to play out. We are going to move away from just using labor as a low cost labor option like textiles and leather. They are the historical industries. But getting these smart people and going in, and you saw the number of startups has now crossed 110,000 startups. Just before COVID, we had 600 startups. So, you can see that. So those startups will ultimately come, and they are all in the new age world. So I would say these, in summary, are the new age sectors that they should look at.
You mentioned technology is really, something that we need to look at. How do you feel technology is changing the way people, especially the young people, are investing in mutual funds?
So I think that there's good and bad here. Okay, the good is that they have information. They can make very quick decisions because they can go and look, say which funds have performed well, how have they done in good times, bad times. Their decision making process has shortened dramatically thanks to technology. Right. So that's one. So that's second aspect is that they uh, ease of execution. The industry has adopted technology in a very good way. So KYCs and doing that paperless transaction, distributors like, Prudent and all that have excellent platforms where you put it in, and I think within for the 2 minutes you can make a company. So the ease of doing business, technology has made a big difference to this world as an investor. But I think also what's happened, and which is something that the investors directly don't see, or it's not affecting them, but in the fund management side, the use of AI to study companies to understand where things can go wrong is rapidly developing. So the fund management industry itself is using AI and all of that in a very rapid way. Technology in seamless execution across has made price discovery better. So overall, that's been very good from an investment universe perspective. It's not directly that a customer experiences, but what I'm saying is they will relate to this because a lot of Gen Z is in fact working in these areas. So the industry is greatly being transformed. The mutual fund industry is being transformed by the whole technology revolution. So I would say that I said it's good and bad, right? So what's the bad? The bad is that you click and you start an SIP in 30 seconds. But then when the market booms and you say, oh, my money has doubled. I put in 12,000 rupees over the last 12 months. Now it's 24,000 rupees. You go and take it out because that instant gratification comes and fights with your delayed gratification. So that ability to invest at the touch of a button means that you also have the ability to redeem at a touch of a button. So your own human mind and the emotions come and help you to do a wrong thing very quickly. So you got to caution yourself that just because I can go and redeem at a touch of a button, that shouldn't be the reason you go and redeem. You got to have. That's where the value of a advisor stroke distributor versus do it yourself. Because in harnessing and controlling your emotions and making sure that you're investing towards a plan is something that a distributor stroke advisor adds immense value to it. And if you see the data in terms of SIPs being stopped before their normal closure dates, right? There's a huge difference between do-it-yourself SIPs done by the investors themselves and advised SIPs done by distributors. Right? There's still a 30% difference, which means that when you go with an advisor, you feel that I should redeem, but then when your advisor talks to you, he will reassure you that this will continue, this good news will continue. Second, you had planned for a goal, stick to that. And if you need money, today there are options that you can take a loan against your mutual fund units to meet the money. You don't need to stop the SIP. So the advisor can guide you on this also, right? On how to manage your thing. So I think that's the key part, that whatever be the technology, ultimately the value of an advisor, because the advisors are also technology savvy. So the same execution speed and the knowledge of various things the advisor can give you at a drop of a hat. So you don't need to go and search 10 websites to get what you want. The advisor will give you all those 10 websites in one shot. He will also seamlessly do the execution for you. They have their own apps, or they've tied up with other app providers. So the value of an advisor, I think, is an important thing, because advisors have also kept pace with the technological changes in the industry.
Makes sense. Since you mentioned about selling when you see a good number, the other thing also happens, right? Market goes down and you get scared, and you sort of do panic selling. How would you advise them to handle volatility and sort of avoid panic selling?
So I think that basically uh, it's hard to, when things are looking bad, like, let's say the Indo-Pak war was launched, right? He's panicking, he thinks the world is going to fall and everything's going to, right? So at that moment, right, always it's the third person talking to you. Sitting yourself, you cannot control your emotions, you cannot do that, because you're a part of that whole whirlpool of negativity which is flowing, right? So that's where it's the guided advice, right? Is the only way out. When you talk to him, you pick up the phone and tell him, hey, this Indo-Pak war has happened, everything is crashing, do I sell? So he can then tell you that from his experience. In the past, when such wars occurred, these crashes were actually wonderful opportunities to buy more rather than to sell, because the money that you put in then made you far greater money. But somebody with that experience and advice needs to tell you that. So I think that the only way to do that is to tell them that pick up the phone and speak to your advisor. So that's the biggest thing. That's why doing it yourself versus having an advisor is that when in trouble, you have somebody at the other end of the line to either calm you down, or to cool you, or to give you an injection of positivity, or remind you that you made that investment with a particular purpose, which is 5 years away. Why are you panicking today about that 5 year later?
So, in terms of making investments, right, like you said about delayed gratification and delayed consumption, how important is it for Gen Z to do goal based financial planning or instead of just randomly, investing?
I would say, rather than say how important it is, I would say the opposite. I would say that no investment should be made without a goal. Absolutely. Your goal could be that in 1 year, I want to buy a stereo. A simple thing. Okay. That may be costing you, 50,000 rupees. And you put in a 4,000 rupee or SIP or a 3,500 rupee SIP and say 1 year, it will reach that. So unless you put a goal, you never know when to take out your money.
Right.
So I would say that actually the opposite, that 100% of your investments have to be with goals, which means that each time you put money, fresh money, set yourself a goal. I mean, write on a piece of paper is historic. Today, nobody uses pen and paper, but write it on your iPad with your, senses, right? With your Apple pen. So what I'm trying to say is capture the goal of your investment for every single investment you do, because that's like a lighthouse. When you're sailing your ship in the troubled waters, sometimes the sea is calm, sometimes it's violent. How do you react to that volatility? Is that you're headed towards the lighthouse. So the light of the lighthouse is the guiding light for you to direct your ship's movement towards it. So all goals are like lighthouses. They tell you where you want to go. And without knowing where you want to go, you won't know whether you have reached where you want to go. It's like if you've seen on the streets, Bangalore, I don't know whether it's there, but definitely I've seen it in Chennai. You see a car speeding up and the dog is just lying down. It suddenly get up and start running behind the car. And the car will then stop and turn, and the dog doesn't know what to do. Why was he chasing the car in the first place? Right? So you shouldn't be like that. You don't just go on investing, you don't know. Because that's when you tend to panic. That's when the market is volatile, you say, should I take out my money? Because you didn't know what you wanted the money for. Right? So if you have a goal, then that goal will decide. The market may be booming, but if your goal is reached, you should ruthlessly redeem. Get my point? Because you've done it for that purpose. I wanted to buy a Harley Davidson bike, but the market is booming now. You don't hesitate that time. Don't say no. Instead of Harley Davidson, I'll change my goal now to buying a car. No, go buy that Harley Davidson, redeem your money because the market may go up after that. But the purpose that you had for investing was to buy that bike. Go and do it. So I would say that goal based investing is the only type of investing you should do. You cannot put any money without having a end goal at it.
Because then you might be more tempted to fall for you don't have a lighthouse to sort of look to. Okay. Other than the things that you sort of discussed, right, what are maybe the common mistakes that you see young investors making when it comes to SIPs or mutual funds?
So I think first is they put too little.
Okay.
That's for
What
the
is too little?
that's why I said they put in 20% of their income
Okay.
or less. According to me, at least 40% of your post-tax
Income.
income has to be in postponed consumption. I'm not using the word savings in postponed consumption.
Right.
40%. So first the thing is they do, oh, अरे invest करना है तो कुछ कर लेते हैं. That's number one. Number two mistake they do is they do too much of DIY. While DIY is essential to learn and understand, right? Use it as a learning curve. DIY has to be not more than 10 to 20% of your total investment, right? So too
Right.
much putting too much in your own skills and your own. I can know. I can beat the market. I can do that. The too much of that confidence, overconfidence. So temper it down. Second. Third aspect is that recognize your emotions, recognize your risk appetite. They don't. They simply because peer pressure. Oh, my friend is doing so much in that. I'll also do F and O. Sandra is doing Bitcoin. I'll also do Bitcoin. Understand whether your nature allows you. So first of all, get that discipline to understand yourself, that your risk appetite. So either you're aggressive, moderate, conservative. Don't need to go beyond that. Just put yourself into one of those spots and judge it by yourself. So don't give in to peer pressure on the nature of your investments. Do that. Fourth is that goal based. I'm just repeating it, right? Gen Z, I don't see them doing anything goal based. So first thing they got to learn is do it goal based. That's important. So that's one thing. It's a mistake which they do if they don't do goal based. Then third is that the final is that taking out the money. Why I stress goal based is take out your money only when your goal is attained. Never redeem your portfolio unless your goal is attained. Then you're protecting yourself. Otherwise, what happens? Because you've invested without a goal, and every time somebody says, "Hey, ये sector अभी बंद हो गया, अभी ये sector चलने वाला," you go and churn your portfolio. So the excessive churning of your portfolio happens because you haven't set a goal, right? So one of the mistakes Gen Z do is hop from one to other. So they say no that you run with the hunt with the hounds and run with the rabbits, right? You can't do both, right?
Yeah.
When it's time to be in the best sector, you can't keep hopping to the best sector every time, right? You can't. Nobody has a clairvoyant view or a astrologer to tell you what's going to do well, right? So this constant desire to churn the portfolio because you made a bad decision and something's underperforming, now go. What went down will go up. What went up will come down. It's a basic fact of life. So if you are truly a long-term investor, you should buy what goes down because someday that will come up. But that requires a lot of guts to do something which is underperforming to go and buy. But the smartest investors I've known are the ones who have bought things. So the biggest thing I want to leave them with say that you make money only from surprises. And you
Surprises.
money
Okay.
from surprises. If the world is just going to be as predicted, you'll make only a normal return.
Right.
Unless there are positive surprises happening, which outweigh the negative surprises, you will not end up better. So the whole art of doing surprises, right, will work only if you diversify, rely on expertise to pick, and third, stick to a goal. So I think this summarizes what I want to kind of convey.
Really well put, I must say. Now, we are almost coming to the end of our conversation. If there was one golden rule that you had to leave Gen Z with for investing, what would that be?
You want to crystallize it down to one rule is that set ambitious goals and start early.
Set ambitious goals and start early. And how different do you think their financial freedom will look compared to previous generations if they follow this?
So I think that what it will enable them to do is something which is a very common four-letter word these days. which is FIRE. FIRE is nothing but financial investing to retire early. So, what will happen is that I believe that this generation will be able to stop a regular work much earlier than the previous generation and have a non target based, just go and enjoy and have fun part of their life. Maybe if it's in the 40s or 45 or 50, vary from person to person. Unlike the previous generation, which had to work pretty much till 60 and then was left with a limited span of another 20 years. These people will have a much more time to go and do the things that they just want to do without having to worry where the next meal is coming from and without having to compromise on the quality of their life. Travel business class, stay in good quality hotels and see the world, right? I think that generation will be able to achieve and execute that much better than the previous generations have been able to.
I must say, you've really sold mutual funds to Gen Z. At least I feel like that, even though I'm not Gen Z, I'm hoping, that is what people feel. And they're able to achieve their goals. I had a lot of fun in this conversation. I learned a lot, and I'm hoping everybody who listens, I'm sure actually everybody who listens would also take away a lot. So thank you so much for your time. It was truly a pleasure to have this conversation with you. So
Thank you, Jaslin. And I wish the Gen Z all the very best in their postponement of consumption journey.
really a new term that I think, we need to normalize. Thank you so much.